Welcome to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. I am Kari Hawker-Diaz. Thank you so much for listening today. On this podcast, we are diving into powerful stories, meaningful conversations, and the people making a difference in our communities right here at home. Today, we're joined by Sage Hancock, the Executive Director of GenerationAll, an organization that's dedicated to building trauma-informed communities and creating spaces for healing and growth. Sage, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Appreciate you so much. Okay, a few months ago, April was both Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month. Why is it so important to recognize and talk about these issues openly?
Yes, such a great question. And April really is a time that we try and focus on talking about it in community spaces as much as we can. And I'm happy that in June we're still able to. The biggest thing for me and where my mind goes when I want to answer this question is we as a society are not comfortable about talking about child sexual abuse or sexual assault yet. We know that people who are sexually assaulted or experience intimate partner violence in adulthood, oftentimes they were also first sexually abused as children. And so really starting as early as we can with having these conversations is really important. And the reason why I'm just honored to be here is I think that it's something that every single household across the state of Utah and nationwide, honestly, needs to talk about because 1 in 7 kids experience sexual abuse before they turn 18.
Is that right here in Utah, or is that
right
a nationwide statistic? Right here in Utah.
They actually anticipate 1 in 7 is sexual abuse via touch specifically. In Utah, the stat is actually 1 in 5 kids before they turn 18. Those are reported numbers will experience sexual abuse or exploitation.
Wow. Okay. All right. How does GenerationAll's mission intersect with these national awareness efforts?
Yeah. When GenerationAll first started, and our mission with GenerationAll is to really look at the generational impact of sexual abuse, we wanted to learn about every other nonprofit that exists in this space. That's something that I have done a lot of work in the past. And I don't know, I think there's a lot of focus on survivor-focused initiatives, which is the number one most important thing.
Sure.
But by only prioritizing the survivor and their healing and having support groups for survivors, things like that, we're also leaving the responsibility of healing just to the survivor as well. So what we do with looking at the generational impact of sexual abuse is how can we not only look at the survivor, but also how can we support and have resources for family members and the community. So healing takes place throughout every kind of population, and we can really break the cycle of generational sexual abuse.
Yeah, you're right. That does leave the responsibility on the survivor, and that's a lot to bear. That's a lot to go through and try to figure out on your own. For those unfamiliar, is there anything else that you want to talk about with GenerationAll and the work that you're doing specifically here in Utah?
Yeah. So I imagine, and so I'm kind of speaking unofficially right now, I imagine healing takes place like a bullseye almost, where we know that the survivor is always at the center of it, but we also know that there's other rings, there's other ripple effects that happen that are not conducive to healing. And so right here in Utah, we actually have retreats for women 18 to 24 in partnership with Sapria, actually another local organization.
Oh, yeah. They've been on the show multiple times. Yeah, they're wonderful.
They're incredible. Mm-hmm. I love them, and I love the work that they do. And something that we're seeing is the average age of disclosure is about 52. The average age of someone going into a Sapria retreat is in their 40s. And so 2 generations are passing, and these women primarily are just like having to cope with kind of this pain of sexual abuse throughout their entire time raising children and then maybe even grandchildren. And so we're doing retreats specifically for women 18 to 24 prior to, kind of those big life events that can be really traumatic, such as marriage, such as like a serious relationship, having a child, going into kind of a long-term career. Things like that are really triggering. We also are releasing what's called the Family Portal. It's in soft launch stage right now, so anyone who's interested can go on and can learn about it. through our website, GenerationAll.org. But the family portal is designed to be a resource and a support group network for family members of survivors, where they can know how to best support the people in their life that they love and care about the most. And then we're also looking at some policy efforts for the state of Utah as well that we'll kind of implement and really focus on this fall, and then trying to get into session in 2026.
Look at everything you guys are doing. That's phenomenal. Wow. Sage, can we go back to what you were just first saying, that someone may not either realize or talk about it openly until they're how old, did you say?
52 years old is the national average. And that happens for a variety of reasons. One, there's still this like culture of secrecy and shame about sexual abuse. I think people really do kind of hold a lot of the blame in that, which is really heartbreaking when, you take the time to learn and understand that. But also, if you read books like The Body Keeps the Score, if you read books like...
That's an amazing book. I'm actually halfway through that book right now. That's crazy. The Body Keeps the Score is an amazing read, you guys.
It's something I highly recommend, but something that they talk a lot about and something that research shows is childhood trauma, which sexual abuse is seen as maybe one of those most traumatic events you can go through as a child. That actually really impacts down to a molecular level who you are, how you make decisions, and your body is really strong and resilient and tries to protect you. And so when you go through something like child sexual abuse, it affects your epigenetics down to your like literal core self, and your body is going to try and protect you. And so a lot of times, and this is scientifically proven time and time again, that people forget their abuse because their body is trying to protect them. Your body's trying to survive.
That's what our brain does, right? It tries to protect us.
Exactly. You're going into like fight, flight, or freeze, or even appease is kind of those 4 trauma responses. And if you have to forget that in order to move on with your life, that's something really common that we see. And so really trying to focus on providing support immediately, providing tools as quickly as we can. It's something that we see as really important.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for talking about that. I that really struck me, which I'm sure people listening, when you said that at first, how old people sometimes are when we finally either realize it or talk about it. Sage, what inspired the creation in the beginning of GenerationAll?
Yes, great question. So we partner with the Miller family here in Utah, who really helps us in regards to operation costs and things like that for our nonprofit, which we're really grateful for. Their family, despite them being very quiet about this, in 2020 they took their story public in regards to the wife and mother of the Miller family, Valerie Clark Miller. She experienced really horrific sexual abuse from the time she was about 13 to 15. And it's something that, despite her being incredibly talented throughout high school, college, having kind of a dream life of, being successful, being incredibly smart, having these beautiful kids, the child sexual abuse impacts lasted her entire life. And so we released a book that I know we're going to talk about in a second called Hometown Betrayal. And we were trying to decide kind of how do we want to move forward with not only honoring Valerie and telling her story openly, but also where can we donate proceeds of the book to, and then how can we prioritize the ripple effects that sexual abuse has. And so we partner with a lot of really incredible organizations. We don't want to recreate the wheel in any way, but we're also just trying to fill gaps in regards to, we've been seeing sexual abuse happens for generations. How can we break that cycle right now? So in 50 years, a different version of you and me are not podcasting and talking about how to fix this then.
Sure. What are some of the core programs or initiatives that GenerationAll is currently offering to support survivors and families when we go back to, like supporting the survivors so they're not doing it on their own?
Yes. So starting with our retreats for women 18 to 24, we highly encourage everybody to look into that and to make referrals as they can. This is something that we pay for as a nonprofit to have women go in and have just resources that they need for free. We also are looking at partnering with universities starting in this fall on offering not only those retreats, but also even just smaller versions of it. So little 4-hour events and seminars and things like that, which we're excited about. The family portal is live, and we're looking forward to all the partnerships that we have with all the organizations here in Utah. This is something totally free. And we're having not only like weekly support groups with this where families can talk and kind of either vent or seek advice or talk through things and just kind of talk about it, but also how can we have this be a place where they can learn. And so we have many guest speakers coming on and talking through things such as even like intimacy after abuse. That's something that is not openly discussed.
It's a real thing though.
And it's something that we have to discuss in order to build healthy families. Another program that we have is called Healing Generations in Utah. We had our first event in April in partnership with Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. And then we'll have our next event in the fall, likely in October. Mid-October is our plan right now, and that's really raising awareness about childhood trauma in regards to early childhood detection, so partnering with healthcare systems, partnering with like community partners and then public health officials on making sure that not only are families and experts aware of childhood trauma, but really intervening early and partnering with groups like mental health services here to have children receive access to care sooner. So it's something that isn't impacting kind of the rest of their life like we're seeing right now.
Wow, that's so much. Okay, if someone's listening and thinking, I have no idea what part of that I would need or what I would qualify for or, what would be good for me. So instead of like them making the decision and, because that might hinder someone making a phone call or looking up information, I imagine you don't have to know. You just like, do people just call and then you guys can kind of figure out like, hey, is a retreat, the best for you, or these classes, or, you guys can take it from there, right?
Yes. Yep. And so anyone can reach out to us. Our website is GenerationAll.org. They can go on our Instagram page, Generation.all. We really try and be accessible. We have a team who will talk, understand kind of what's needed, and make referrals either to one of our programs inside GenerationAll or through one of our local or national partners. We believe that nonprofits can't be competitive in this space. Any dollar even spent toward fundraising for one nonprofit or another is impacting what should be spent on care of the survivor.
Yeah.
And so we're really trying to prioritize partnerships as well. And so we highly recommend anyone reach out, and we'd love to, talk and see where we can help.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think that helps the nerves of somebody listening going, I don't know what I need, so that helps that you guys kind of take it from there. Okay. The new audiobook, Hometown Betrayal, was released. Congratulations. First of all, can you tell us about the story behind the book you mentioned just a little bit ago?
Yes. I'm so excited that the audiobook is out because it really adds kind of another element of people who prefer listening to books rather than reading. Hometown Betrayal, it tells the story of Valerie Clark Miller, who it not only follows kind of the horrific abuse that she experienced as a teenager, but also it talks about kind of how often systems have been designed to fail survivors. We live in a space where it's not a justice system for survivors. Elizabeth actually says that in the foreword of the book. Elizabeth Smart does the foreword. And she says this isn't designed for survivors. And so we watch kind of these organizational failures continue. And despite her best efforts to seek healing and to, she had money for resources available, it still continued to kind of plague every part of her life.
Do you know when that took place? Like how long ago it was?
Yes, it was in the 70s.
Okay, so a lot of changes since then. I was just wondering if it's so different now. So in the 70s, okay.
In the 70s. And something that I think is important to share about this book is I think people read books for the satisfaction of reading and kind of having the story make you feel good, and you're able to end and kind of remove discomfort, right? They seek stories even about survivors of sexual abuse. They want to see that as someone who overcomes something temporarily and then is able to move on and kind of have this like happy life after.
Like a happy ending.
Yeah, we as humans crave that, but that's not the case for most survivors. most survivors, if they share or disclose at all, it's something that plagues a lot of aspects of their life. One small stat that I'll share in the middle of this is that only 17% of survivors of child sexual abuse have a secure attachment style when they become parents later.
Whoa, can we say that again?
Yes.
17%.
17% of survivors of child sexual abuse have a secure attachment style with their future children.
Later on in their life.
Children who have parents who are survivors are also 3.6 times more likely to experience child sexual abuse themselves. And this is something that, unfortunately, we actually see in this story. It's one of the few books that documents over the course of 50 years since that abuse. And we watch what has happened. It goes all the way up until, we were doing an investigation in 2020. And so It talks through all of that, but it also is something that I think we as community members and advocates and people who just are of the general public, we have to kind of invest our emotional well-being in reading about these stories because it's so important that we understand. We talked about 1 in 5 to 1 in 7 kids are sexually abused before they turn 18. 1 in 3 women experience sexual violence. Whether we know it or not, someone that we love deeply is a survivor and is affected. And so we have to read stories like this to understand how we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Okay. We talked about Hometown Betrayal, the book, the audiobook, and how it's tied to the mission of GenerationAll. It's kind of what kicked it off, right?
Yes.
Okay, so cool. Do you hope listeners take away, you just talked about, of course it's heavy. Of course, when we're listening to these stories, but what do you hope people take away from the audiobook?
I hope that they realize that sexual abuse is not discriminatory based on where we live, based on socioeconomic lines, based on race, based on religion, based on anything like that. Sexual abuse is something that happens in kind of the richest, highest power neighborhoods.
Can happen anywhere.
As well as inside poverty, neighborhoods. And it's honestly at equal rates. And so how can we read this book and then walk away becoming empowered on starting with your family, talking about sexual abuse openly, but also trying to remove the stigma from it. I think anybody as a community member, I'm not a parent yet, and it's something that I feel really passionate about. How can we talk about sexual abuse and remove the stigma? An example I say a lot is 20 years ago, nobody talked about going to therapy. Nobody talked about...
It's true. It's different now.
Yeah.
It's just, we talk about it a lot more openly.
And it's not stigmatized really anymore. People can talk about a therapy appointment in between meetings, they feel more comfortable talking about that, talking about taking an antidepressant, and it's something that's normalized. And that's where I want to really push, that we're able to talk about sexual abuse and hard topics like rape openly without trying to shy away from those subjects.
Yeah, so important. Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah, we weren't really talking about mental health 20 years ago. It was just kind of like a hush-hush. It was almost like you were ashamed to admit you were going to a therapist if you were, and now it's much different. How are you working to heal generations right here in Utah, Sage?
Yes, we have officially partnered with, her name is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She was the first Surgeon General of California. She's been a pediatrician for over 20 years, and a truly incredible woman. If you want to just hear a bite-sized piece, look up her name with a TED Talk, and it's a TED Talk that has over 12 million views as of right now.
Dang, what's her, say her name one more time?
Yes, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris.
Okay.
And something that she has invested really her life's work into is looking at adverse childhood experiences. So ACEs is what they're called, and addressing those in childhood. A lot of people have talked about ACE scores in regards to retrospectively, looking back when you're an adult and seeing how it impacts you, how it might have impacted your upbringing as a child. Mm-hmm. She has implemented some really cool processes in regards to training doctors on how to look out for signs of trauma in children, and then actually addressing healthcare through looking at your childhood trauma and how much it's impacting you. An example.
Interesting.
Yes, it's fascinating, and I highly recommend anyone who maybe just like that piqued their interest to look into it, because the science behind it is heartbreaking and incredible, but you have a 3 times greater likelihood of getting cancer or heart disease or 9 out of 10 of the other causes of death nationally if you have higher levels of childhood trauma. It truly impacts us at a genetic level.
Wow.
And so we're looking at actually going to as far of a root cause problem as we can on how can we really look at this from a systemic issue, and how can we start as young as we can, which means like that pediatricians might be talking to parents of 2-year-olds saying, hey, if you are experiencing this child to, I don't know, like an intimate partner violence situation, if someone in your family is incarcerated, there are 10 ACEs. If you're putting your child in that kind of home system, their likeliness of not developing height and weight metrics, their likeliness of developing something like asthma increases tenfold sometimes. And so we're really looking at how we can address this systemically and then how we can break the cycle. So our generation of like the cutest kids who are growing up right now in Utah, they're not experiencing the same thing that we did or our parents did.
Wow, that's so interesting, Sage. Okay, do you have a piece of advice from an expert you've heard recently that's kind of stuck with you and you'd like to share with our audience?
Yes. I had a few coming into this that I kind of want to think through.
Yeah, take your time.
I think I'm actually going to mention something that Bessel van der Kolk said in Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
He compared sexual abuse to survivors of like war veterans and how much our biological components they're actually really similar for survivors of sexual abuse and survivors of things as horrific as like losing, your friends in a war, watching like bombs go off next to you. It's something that I think trauma is trauma and pain is pain, and I don't like comparing, but I don't think that people understand how serious sexual abuse is, with how prominent it is. I don't think that people see it as a big deal, I guess. I think it's something that we've coped with, and something that Bessel said that just really stood out to me is these 2 groups exhibit the same symptoms lifelong later, like throughout their lives. I'm kind of fumbling
with
words.
health issues and with
health issues,
mental
with mental
health.
health, and with just feeling kind of this emptiness in regards to if they kind of just try and push it under the rug, it will end up coming back later in worse ways. He describes kind of like this waste basket example where you have the ability to fill up this waste basket of trauma and pain, regardless of if it's sexual abuse or things like being in a war. And your body is able to keep filling that up during the time of survival. But once you move on, your brain is telling you that it's full and they have to take it out. And so healing has to happen in one way or another. And the more that we can encourage that, the better.
What would you say to someone who's thinking, because someone listening might wonder, okay, yes, this happened to me when I was like 4. It doesn't bother me anymore. I don't think about it. It's not something that like comes up in my life. Why would I want to talk about it when it's something that, back then was traumatizing for me? In their mind, they may think like it's more damage than to actually bring it back up, and when they don't really think about it anymore or haven't in years. You have any advice for someone like with that kind of mindset, which I'm sure a lot of people go through, and they wonder if it may be worse to actually bring it up and talk about it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that same boat, and if you're listening and that's something that you've experienced, I understand that. And I understand that that's a really difficult conversation to even have with yourself.
Probably one of the hardest of your entire life.
By far. Something I will say, though, is that even if you're trying to not keep it front of mind, your body still remembers that, and your body is still exhibiting symptoms of pain and trauma regardless of how well you're doing. Actually, even like overperforming and being addicted to things like working or exercising, those are actually signs of trauma that your body is ignoring. It also means that your likeliness of developing something like an autoimmune disease, something like MS, which is actually what Valerie in the book was diagnosed with, all of those things are actually tied back to that trauma. And so by really kind of continuing to push it away, your body's going to find other ways to exhibit those same symptoms. And it's something that, I mean, it sucks. Like, it sucks to go through that. It sucks to address your childhood trauma. It sucks to address sexual abuse and to kind of relive those. But there are other ways to heal with it rather than what we've seen in the past of just maybe traditional talk therapy. Resources like EMDR, which is like desensitization.
Yeah, that is so wonderful that that's an option now.
Yes, I think it's honestly incredible, and something that, I mean, I think is just worth looking into is if you're feeling kind of this pull. There's not just one way out. There's not just one way to do it. And the more that you choose to maybe just look at that, the more healing will come. And there might be components of your life that you haven't even thought were maybe signs of that sexual abuse history that are exhibiting.
Thank you for that advice. Thank you so much, Sage. How, on the opposite end, how have you seen people that have done the work, and how have you seen their lives change?
That's a good question. I think the pain doesn't necessarily go away, but the feeling of, like, I guess just feeling lighter does. When you can acknowledge kind of the pain and the hurt that you go through and work on, like, even like we just talked about EMDR, like desensitizing yourself to that, it means that you can focus on the now. It means that you're not focusing on the past. You're not focusing on the future. You're not having major anxiety on trying to control something that you can't control because you were out of control when the abuse happened to you.
Oh, okay.
Or it means that you're not reliving the past and beating yourself up for it. It allows you to live in the present. And I have also seen some really incredible people who, when they focus on their healing, it means that they are able to be advocates for this as well. Those are some of the best people in this space who have spoken up about it, who have done policy work, who have really made a difference. And you can watch kind of that tangible difference on how many other people they've impacted.
Sure, and just to share their story and how much it's helping others, and just to talk about it like we mentioned we didn't used to. So people don't feel so alone, in their own pain. Yeah. Did you want to talk about the new program that you're launching and how this will support your ongoing mission and serve those in need?
Yes. So the Family Portal is something that we have really been working on for a long time, and making sure that we're doing this through a trauma-informed, survivor-led approach that is also kind of like looked at and vetted through experts in this space. But the Family Portal, it's actually like even the word port. We specifically chose that because a port means to unload or to load. And so we wanted this to be a place that any family member who has experienced any level of abuse from someone that they love or care about can go to. They can unload, they can vent, they can have a safe place, they can have someone to just talk to, but they can also load. They can also educate themselves. They can also seek opportunities and like resources and even advice on, the justice system's really complicated, therapy's really complicated. Our vision with this started where I don't know if any of you guys have ever had a loved one who experienced some sort of health scare or some sort of addiction. Like when you look at AA, so when you look at alcohol addiction, when you look at mental health, when you look at cancer, heart disease, there are support groups for every single one of those who have family member support groups.
Oh, true.
So if you go to an AA meeting, there's also a support group for family members because they know that the addiction impacts more than just that person.
Yep.
My mom is going through cancer treatment. There are a lot of support groups, even at Huntsman locally, that offer support groups for caregivers and family members of those going through cancer treatment. That doesn't currently exist, at least not on like a national level or even a state level.
And how it should be.
And so we know that healing takes place through that. And so the family portal, we've created 100% for free. So anyone can go on, can learn, can ask questions. And it goes from anywhere of parents who they just had an 8-year-old child disclosed to them and can ask questions, to you are feeling out of control because your daughter just disclosed to you while she's in college, and she lives 6 hours away. Being able to talk with families of other college parent survivors, but also kids of survivors' spouses. And so we really just want to fill that gap, especially for nonprofits who are doing incredible survivor work, and they don't have the money or resources to allocate towards supporting family members as well.
Yeah.
How can we fill that gap?
Family portal, is that just on the website? Is that where people would find it?
Yes, yeah. So you can go to GenerationAll.org, and there's information there.
Okay, amazing. Congrats on that. That's phenomenal too. Okay, wrapping up here. Sage, what gives you the most hope as you continue to do this crucial work?
It's conversations like this, honestly. Something that we're even seeing on, for example, Instagram is sometimes like ads or events or things like that will maybe be shadow banned because of the word sexual abuse, sexual violence.
Wow.
It's something that we as a society, or even, groups like Meta, we're not able to talk about at a mass level. And the only way that we can talk about this is by bringing it to light. This is something that has hidden under shadows for a really long time. And so every time that a member of our team is able to have a conversation, able to speak, that brings me a lot of hope in how much we're going to be able to accomplish over the next 10 years. Something else that gives me hope is this next generation. I have worked a lot with like high school and college students, and seeing their passion for this and being able to talk about it openly, I think is something that we've been missing. And I'm really excited to have kind of this rising generation be able to speak openly about it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I recommend that, your teenagers are old enough to hear about this. Your even like 8-year-old is old enough to hear about this. And so if we raise this generation by talking about it openly and by destigmatizing it, I have so much hope for the future that these numbers are going to drop and that kids are going to grow up in happier, healthier lives.
These kids are stars. They're going to change the world. Absolutely. They are. I think you're absolutely correct on that. Okay, Sage, if someone is listening right now and this has been a tough listen for them and they've been brave enough to listen all the way to the very end, and they're thinking right now, I think it's time for me to call someone, to talk to someone. What does it look like? Is it easier sometimes for people to go to the website first, like maybe the family portal? Do we call and talk to someone? Do we immediately have to like talk about what we've been through? Because people might fear that as well. What does it look like if we get to the point where we're ready to call?
Yes, we are a safe, no questions asked organization. No one has to share something that they don't feel comfortable with. I would say if you're on social media, sometimes it feels a lot less stressful to just send a DM.
That's true. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to. We're just at generation.all. That's something that anyone can do, or even if you kind of just follow us, and we've had quite a few people where when we share something such as like false reporting statistics or talking about kind of the intricacy of being a spouse of a survivor, we've had people reach out and ask questions there. So it can start really small where it's just responding to something. We try and keep our eyes out for that and respond really promptly on social media. You can also just reach out, sage@generationall.org. That's my personal email.
You
or
say
the
that one more
website.
time, your email one more time?
Yes, sage@generationall.org. So SAGE, and then generationall.org. And that's something that we'd love to have people reach out, and they can even just learn more if they want, and we can tell them, and then people can kind of choose to ask questions from there, choose to get involved. This is something that first step can maybe seem like the hardest step, because you're choosing to acknowledge maybe something that you've kept quiet for a long time or have a lot of pain around talking about, and you're in a safe place.
And GenerationAll is here for you, most importantly,
Yes.
so you don't have to do this alone. Okay, Sage, is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't get to, or anything else that you want to say?
I know. I think I just want to, thank you for allowing me to come here and maybe share something that isn't really easy to talk about. It's something that I'm always grateful that we're able to have these hard conversations. One thing I will share by kind of an incredible other partner that we've worked with is, he said that when we talk about sexual abuse, a lot of people say, I know this is a hard subject. I know this is a hard topic. And he said that's exactly why we should be talking about it. If it's hard to talk about, imagine how hard it is to live it as a child. Mm-hmm. And so if we can all commit to even just talking about this openly, we're going to make the world, starting right here in Utah, a better place.
You're wonderful. Sage, thank you for everything that you and GenerationAll is doing to help people get through some of the most difficult times in their life and change their life for the better, not feel alone. Sage, thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to another episode of Fresh Off the Set. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.